Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. We're going to get started in about 90 seconds or so. So thank you for joining us. Thank you for arriving early. We have what appears to be a very global audience, so I appreciate people tuning in from around the globe. We will get started in about 1 minute, so just hang tight. We have a few last minute people that are in the waiting room being admitted into the webinar. So thank you for joining early. Just from a testing perspective, everybody should have access to something that says Q&A. Just for fun, if you would not mind shifting over to Q&A real quickly just to test it out. Just tell us from what part of the world you're coming from. It'd be nice to hear where people are located. So go into the Q&A real quickly and just type where you're from. All right. Definitely truly global. All right. And again, a couple of the people that haven't tested out the Q&A. This is going to be in listen only mode today. So we encourage you to use the Q&A if you have any questions as we are going along. It's 1 minute after, so I think it's time to get started. Thank you again for joining us for our webinar on Do You Have a 360-degree View of Your Suppliers, presented by Synertrade. Let's move to the next slide. Ron, would you mind introducing yourself, please?
Thank you, Roger. Hello, everyone. Really pleased to be on this webinar and addressing all of you. My name is Ram Panyam. I'm based in Bangalore in India. In Synertrade, I handle the professional services, mainly for the North America region. Been with Synertrade for about 9 years now on different capacities, and overall about 20 years in the technology to consulting to process procurement solutions. Looking forward for presenting the solution to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Ram. And my name is Roger Blumberg. I am the GM for Synertrade North America. I've been in the procure tech space for over 25 years now. And prior to that, 10 years in procurement leadership roles in various industries. Derek?
Hi, everyone. Derek Pettinato. I'm based in Rhode Island in the US. I've been with Synertrade for close to 10 years now, approximately 25 years of integration experience. I lead the US integration team, which is responsible for data orchestration, integration, communications, pretty much the handshake between our Synertrade platform and any of our customers' legacy or ERP systems. So welcome, everyone.
Thank you, Derek. So with that, we'll move to the next slide. And so today we're talking about strategic supplier management, really, or again, do you have a 360-degree view of your suppliers? And we will be sending these slides out because I think there's some good content in here to share with everybody. I love both Gartner and Hackett and how they approach this topic. And again, this is very fresh material from the past year. So in the case of Gartner, they say that 88% of procurement leaders prioritize supplier collaboration as a top initiative. If you go back 10 years ago, it wasn't considered a top initiative. Right now, 88% considered to be top. Top typically means in the top 5. And then we move over to the Hackett group. I love this one. You're going to achieve a 58% faster procurement cycle if you're an organization that does strategic supplier management. So if you know a lot about your suppliers, you're informed about your suppliers, you're going to be able to make decisions a lot faster about your suppliers. And again, we'll be sending this out. Next slide, please. So do you have a 360-degree view of your suppliers? And if you do, which of these items could have been prevented? Potentially some, potentially none. But there are a lot of tools and technology out there these days that give you both insights into things like weather and the impact it's going to have on your supply chain, geopolitical issues and concerns, Things like diversity and sustainability impact. Financial is probably the biggest one that's out there, but having a true 360-degree view of your suppliers, it's not going to prevent everything, but it will give you a lot more insights than you currently have. That's for sure. These are just some examples that you see here over the last couple years. The ship that blocked the Suez Canal, shortages in baby formula. The bottom right is the bridge that collapsed because a freighter ran into it, and it closed the port of Baltimore, which is one of our largest ports in North America. The tsunami in Japan, again, it wasn't an ability to predict the tsunami. It was knowing what parts were impacted as soon as that tsunami hit. So with that, let's move to the next slide. So what happens when you don't have a 360-degree view? And again, our definition of 360 is knowing everything, right? So, I hate to say that there's doom and gloom in not having a 360, but there truly is a lot of doom and gloom. Clearly, financial is going to lead to bankruptcy, which is going to lead to supply chain disruption. When suppliers start to have financial issues, the first thing that happens with them is quality failures. And that quality failure ends up in your part or your product. Financial impact, obviously suppliers do go out of business from time to time. It's going to impact you. Geopolitical, that is just, you can't go 24 hours, particularly in the US, without geopolitical impacting supply chain on a daily basis. And we've gotten to the point now where we're helping our clients recover from tariff announcements on what seems like a daily basis. My favorite about having a 360-degree view of your suppliers is giving you transparency or solving for lack of transparency, right? So favoritism, good, bad, or indifferent, it happens in procurement, right? We have our favorites, but are our favorites truly our best? Not necessarily. And a good 360-degree program is 100% going to allow you to stay on top of that. And last but not least, compliance breaches. Those happen all the time. Are you staying on top of your documentation? Are you staying on top of your certification? Are you working with a supplier that has all the documentation and certifications that they're required to have? And then we just listed below just a few of the problems that we've seen over the last couple of years associated with not strategically managing your suppliers. So next slide, please. So what is, in our opinion, having a 360-degree view of your suppliers? I have it as 4 different things. The first one is strategically onboarding your suppliers. We still talk to companies that send out a spreadsheet to onboard a supplier. That is not strategically managing your suppliers. You should have a different onboarding by different commodities. You should have it by different geographies. You should be collecting the document and certifications, NDAs, and everything as part of the onboarding process. Getting a supplier into your system correctly is the first step to correctly managing your suppliers. The second part is scorecarding your suppliers. And in this day and age, you'd be surprised how many companies still are not consistently scorecarding their suppliers. How do you know if your supplier is performing well or not if you are not scorecarding your suppliers? So at Synertrade, we're a big advocate of scorecarding, and Ron will be showing you a little bit what that looks like. In the bottom right-hand corner, and Derek will talk about this in a little bit, is picking the right third-party data source to properly validate your supplier. So at Synertrade, we have all of these pre-built connectors into our solution. So we are making sure that you are staying on top of financial risk for public and private, diversity information, sustainability, supply chain risk information, and compliance data. We consider that to be having a 360-degree view of your suppliers, I'd say you don't need to pick and choose all of these, but I think for your strategic suppliers, there should be some level of this as well too. And lastly, what are you doing when you collect all this information? Do you have a quality process, something like an 8D or a 5Y or a corrective action program? It would be, it'd be a shame that you spend all the time to do all these great things to understand, but not doing anything about it. And Ron will spend just a few minutes a day highlighting that as well too. So that is our view at Synertrade of what strategically managing your supplier looks like, onboarding them, scorecarding them, bouncing information against third-party data, and then obviously performing corrective action when a supplier is not performing well. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ram, who's going to spend a little time walking you through what good supplier management looks like from a technology perspective. And again, feel free to use the Q&A as we are going through today. We'll do our best to respond to as many of those questions as we can. Ram?
Thank you, Roger. Next slide, please. The one after as well. So Roger touched on some key important points about how do we bring in the 360-degree view of the suppliers, which means what's the source of information or the different sources. He talked about the supplier self-declaration when they register themselves, bringing in third-party data, bringing in different data from ERPs, etc. I'll show you within the application how that functions, but also extend it to also include a couple of points such as you engage with your supplier over a period of time, how do you evaluate them? How do you get ratings out of each of their activities? And that becomes an input for scorecarding and for 360 view of your supplier data as well. So let's get into the application itself. I'm going to share my screen and let's go. That'll be the entire screen right now. It should be there in about a second. Are we good to go?
Yep, it's running.
Perfect. Thank you, Roger. So what you see on screen is the Synertrade solution, the V5. Let me jump into one of the key areas for supplier data, which is the supplier hub or the supplier database. As Roger mentioned, we invite suppliers to register within the platform. And once you do, there's a lot of information that we capture coming in from the supplier itself, from the elementary information about company, contact, the categories they support, and also certain questionnaires or surveys that they can answer. You can see a lot of color-coded indicators out here, what we refer to as risk indicators. So you have your ESG scores, environmental, governance, finance, quality, whatever it could be. And these could be data coming in from any of the third-party data providers, a BBD, a DNB, EcoVadis, what you name it, we can integrate with them. And if I dive deep into one of the favorite suppliers for us, which is an NMAC, and here you can see that we store all that information about the risk indicators right here. And we have questionnaires that you can open up to suppliers to come in and provide their input. So I could, let's say, raise an environmental risk assessment questionnaire with the supplier. They go in, they fill in all the information. You have a predefined score for the responses, and that becomes an indicator as well. And you could have multiple different questionnaires associated. And the basic idea is that it's not just a third-party data, it's supplier declarations that you can have. Then you also have certifications that you can obtain from suppliers, because when you talk about 360, you're talking about everything about that supplier, including are they compliant with the standards, right? So do they have right information that's available? Same thing with bank account information. Are they valid or not? This is something that we check. If they give you fraudulent data, that's a big red flag you want to be alerted about. So we have those indicators, checks and balances that's in place. And also when you get to third-party data itself, something like an EcoVadis can fill you a lot more information. So we start collecting all this information within the system, automatic refreshes, regular basis, and all of that becomes key inputs for a 360. In addition to this, it could also be that We have a lot of different systems that integrate. Derek will talk about in detail on integrations. So it could be something like on-time delivery, quality performance indicators. You can bring in all that data, store it on different profiles so that it is accessible to you at the right place at the right time. Plus, we also have ratings. I could rate suppliers based on different material categories that they are associated with, to say this is a preferred supplier, not a preferred supplier. I could segment suppliers saying they're strategic, they're tactical, they're transactional only. So there are multiple different qualification criteria that you build into the application or into your supplier profile when you when you begin to form that 360. What we do within the system is also that we look at contract data, what's the consumption rate that's possible, in order to say, is this supplier compliant enough? Are we compliant with the contractual terms? We also have performance tracking. Over a period of time, you could do performance evaluations and then keep track of, let's say, a cost and quality, how have they evolved over a period of time. So the 360 is not static, it's more on being comprehensive, engage as you go along with the engagement, the whole of the information can be captured. So within the supplier profiling itself, you can capture a lot more details. Let me go into other sources through which you can get more of these information in order to qualify a supplier, in order to add to the 360. I'm going to go into goods receipts. So it could be that you are doing a lot of receipts, you're issuing purchase orders with these suppliers, you're doing the receipts. Even at this standpoint, you could rate a supplier. So within the application, you can see that I'm doing a quick goods receipt for 2 out of 10 quantity, a partial receipt. I go ahead and click on complete delivery, and I get an option to rate a supplier at this stage where it's asking how was their delivery on that goods delivery. I could rate them on top quality, price, right here, and this becomes an input in order to say that, okay, this is adding to how the supplier performance over a period of time, and that is also a key in consideration for 360. We've looked at different data sources, we've looked at supplier self-declarations, we looked at how over a period of time, suppliers' engagement adds to it. Last point on life cycle of a supplier is that even when you have certificates expiring, you do some evaluation of suppliers, change of statuses, you may want to requalify a supplier for whatever reason. We consider all of those as inputs for a supplier 360 to get that picture in place. One aspect of it is that you could have a 360-degree information sitting in one particular place, but what's the use until it actually helps you in conducting your activities? So when I go into something like a sourcing activity, let's say I'm taking this particular sourcing event and I'm going into my supplier management within that sourcing event, you see those familiar indicators already available. So this is making it meaningful at that point in time, wherein it says, okay, so you know you're working with a risky supplier or somebody who's not rated the best. Second is, if I, let's say, introduce additional suppliers, or maybe I'm starting off with a fresh event and I'm introducing a supplier, at that point of adding that supplier onto the sourcing event, you could have checks and balances in place which warn you, saying that, are you sure you want to work with the supplier because they look risky, right? So you couldn't have, it needs to be made more meaningful and not just static information that you can consider. So you could have it there. Also, let's say I want to go into contracts, right? So I want to look at my contracts. I want to find out all those suppliers who are impacted by this particular sourcing, let's say, calamity or any geopolitical information. I want to go look at specific suppliers. So we have identification of these suppliers. So I can go in, I can say, okay, let's look at contact information. Who are all my suppliers for whom a certain risk, let's say I'm taking company risk, right? Country risk or company risk, any one, and the level is greater than 2, if I may say. So when I do that, the system automatically filters and gives me a list of suppliers who match that criteria. And I can see that these are my suppliers who are impacted by that risk indicator, risk qualifier, and I need to work with these suppliers. That's something that we could do. Lastly, bringing it all together in a more meaningful manner also, we have analytics and dashboards. So it's always good to see different reports, visualizations, etc. So even that data coming in from different sources, third-party data, whatever it may be, you can have a visualization of all that information. Of course, you need to stay focused. Let's say I want to look at all of my suppliers who are financially risky, like Twitter, and I can see that among the key suppliers, these are the ones who are high risk, low risk, etc. So all in all, you can bring in a lot of information to qualify your suppliers, define the 360, and go through the process. But at the end of the day, it's how you use that data, at what point do you want to put it in checks and balances, and how do you make sense of it? That's the key element. With that, I stop sharing, and I pass it on back to the presentation for Derek to pick on the
Thanks, Rob.
integrations. Thank you.
So in order
Thank you,
for
Rob.
360 that we are talking about to be successful, there does have to be some level of integration with legacy systems and integration with third-party data sources. And so we asked Derek, who leads up our integration department, to walk us through what good looks like when it comes to properly integrating third-party data into a solution like Synertrade. So Derek?
Thank you, Roger. So with any integration, whether it's an ERP or legacy systems, it's important to we feel it's very important to follow a structured approach for this process, right? So one important point with the structured approach is to understand that you see on the screen now that these are not in silos. They don't exist amongst themselves. There's no walls around them. Pretty much these steps are blended together and also integrated themselves. And to be able to get a true supplier 360 view, we need data, and most importantly, visibility of this data. And you can see on the slide here, and we'll provide these slides. We break it up into different processes, five processes in general: planning and assessment, where we go in and evaluate the business needs, work with the stakeholders, and plan out the integration process. Then we move into API development and testing. So APIs could be, for a supplier 360 point of view, is connecting to third-party suppliers, third-party tools, for example, D&B and EcoVadis. So we'd work with the API developers to connect to those standard providers to bring in the relevant risk information, et cetera. And then we go through the process. As you can see here, we map the data elements. We clean the data, cleanse anything that might be affecting the actual the data being correct. So you don't want data in there that has some people put emojis inside of their supplier names, et cetera, like that. So we clean the data, make sure everything's where it needs to be. And then the integration process begins, where we do compliance checks. We work with performance monitoring systems to make sure that we're not overloading any systems or having any latency issues. And in the end, it's always maintenance and support, right? So you don't want to just walk away and say, you know, here you go, here's your suppliers, work with them amongst yourselves. The monitoring and the maintenance is pretty much working with these risk management providers and saying, you know, every 30 days they may update their scores. So you want to put a process in place where it's transparent to the customer, where they don't have to go in and manually update scores. They can literally just sit back, and every time a score is updated for a risk management data point, would be automatically consumed by the platform. Next slide, please. So here you see a very high level of types of integration options, right? So from a supplier 360 point of view, we need to get data in from a legacy system or an ERP. And the way we do that is 3 different ways usually, which covers every aspect. We can either go in and pretty much do just a dump of data outside of the system into a flat file. Massage the data and use maybe like a FTP type of system where we would exchange the data inside of that middle layer. Or we can connect through a middleware system. In our case, we use a middleware system called Lobster. So in this case, we would massage data. The middleware pretty much massages the data into what we need to absorb on the Synertrade side. And you can see the last and the most preferable option would be a direct connect using a standard API. We offer an enormous amount of standard APIs. They're open APIs, and we work with the customer to map the data points. And we don't really force the customer to adhere to any structure. We use the Lobster middleware, and we could make any structure that comes out of their legacy system or the ERP or any type of risk provider into the format that we need. And when some points about using this as a supplier 360 is you want data quality and synchronization, right? And it's always very important to have a single source of truth, right? Within the integration, it enables a single source of truth by consolidating supplier data from the various systems into one platform. And also, it's very important that you want to automate the data that's being exchanged, right? So with the integration, you want to make sure that you reduce the manual effort, but you increase the efficiency of the data that's going back and forth. And like I spoke about, we want a standardized data format. We want real-time visibility. We don't want to see scores from last quarter. We want real-time visibility. So it's very, very important to work with the risk providers to get on their schedule where we're getting the latest, and also provide the ability for at any one time having the customer either click a button or make a request to our system where it would go off and fetch the most recent data for that supplier. And you want it to be to follow a very strict compliance and risk management structure, as well as performance metrics, right? So we want to make sure that we have a standardized dashboard like Ram showed, where we can monitor and see the performance of different metrics. Next slide, Lisa, please. So here is a very high-level supplier integration process. So I have it broken down into two different processes. One is a file-based process where you may have a customer that has a very old ERP or legacy system that doesn't have the ability to expose any APIs where we could do synchronous calls. So on the top one, you'll just see a very standard process of something triggers a response in our system or any type of SRM system where we say, hey, we need to perform some type of action. So that's after the action is performed, that's what we call a trigger. A trigger would call a web service. The web service would either go directly out to the provider to bring in any type of risk mitigation stores or anything like that, as well as we could also set it up to call internal APIs as well. So I believe, a best practice throughout the whole supplier 360 idea is to work directly with your suppliers, right? So we have the ability to provide surveys to our suppliers as well as questionnaires that we can send out regularly and say, hey, give us an update on how things are working on your side. The suppliers would be required to answer those, and we would have the data stored in our platform to be able to work with and provide metrics for that data. And also, you can see that using a process like this, it's very important that we want to reduce the errors and any type of risks, and we also want clear communication. We don't want any hiccups in the integration process. So that's why step number 2 is very important, where if it's possible to directly communicate with either the ERP or the risk providers, we can make a synchronous call where it's real time. We go off, we make a call, we establish a handshake and receive back the information that we need. And one other thing to point out here is we need to be responsible for the speed of deployment, as well as managing any change management, right? So change management sometimes is a kind of like a pain point where you've been doing the same thing forever and now you're told to do something different. So we work very closely with our customers and suppliers to initiate a better change management type of system when we do the integration with these external systems. And that's pretty much an overall high-level process of how we integrate with 360 suppliers.
Thank you, Derek. So hopefully what we showcased today was a good introduction to what we consider to have a really strong 360-degree view of your suppliers, excuse me. Both myself, Derek, and Ram are available to stay on. So if you would like to use the Q&A functionality now and have any questions, let's just move over to that. I know we're close to time, but both of us, all three of us, excuse me, are available to stay a little bit longer. So if you have any questions, comments, please go ahead and switch over to the Q&A tab. I think many of you were able to use it earlier to tell us where you were from. So we are available to take any questions that you may have. And if you don't have any questions that you want to do in the chat functionality, feel free to scan the QR code. Also, if you just want to reach out to me directly, I'm just going to type my Synertrade email in. And you can reach me at roger.blumberg@synertrade.com. Otherwise, I want to thank everybody for spending some time with us today. For those in Europe, have a good evening. Those in Asia, I think it's a good morning. And US, have a good afternoon. So thank you for your time and thanks for joining Synertrade.